try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Hey folks, welcome to Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. It's me, Dave, and with me, as always, is my good friend...
Chris.
That's right. You know what I like, Chris, is that we don't steal each other's glory. We allow each other to say our own names.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. You could have introduced me, but you let me do my own introducing. I do appreciate that.
Well, maybe just thinking about this to kind of throw the audience off, we should switch it up, and I'll call myself Chris, and you call yourself Dave.
Okay. Do you want to do that now, or like in a future episode?
No, I think I just I think I may have actually ruined it. In a far, far future episode. Perhaps maybe when, both of us are maybe in the throes of cognitive decline, we'll just do it, sort of naturally and just kind of forget who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that could be any moment now, actually. So
I don't think if we tried to do it on purpose, we could sustain it for an entire episode. I'm not sure we have that ability.
Yeah, probably not. Well, I am still Dave. I'm going to remember that for the remainder of this episode. Thanks for joining us, folks. So, Chris, we've got a fun topic to talk about today. I guess it's fun. I don't know.
I mean, it's fun. It was actually a it was a listener suggested topic. So, one that we had talked about, I mean, probably better part of a year ago doing, and now we're finally getting around to it in the rotation. So, hey, we get there eventually, listeners. Don't hesitate to send us topics.
Yep. And I believe, how we're going to, and I'm looking forward to this, is you are going to teach me how to be a good parent. So this is just Chris doing sort of like a master's class, like Dan Brown teaching potential authors how to write page turners. Chris is going to teach us all how to be good parents. I'm looking forward to it. I got my pad, my pencil. It's actually, I've got several little tiny golf pencils sharpened.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah.
I'm ready to go. All right. Go ahead, fire away, Chris. Teach me how to be a good parent.
Okay. Didn't you have a story that you were going to tell first of all?
Well, yes, and that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about
together.
That is not what we're talking about, folks. Today we are talking about parenthood and media, and parenting in the age of, access to literally, everything on your phone, on your tablet, on your television, on your computer. Just, how to do it and the challenges that we all face. Maybe a little reflection on what it was like for us middle-aged folks when we were kids and how different it is today. But I did think I'd start with a little a little story about media and a way I approached a recent problem, and want to kind of, Chris, get your thoughts about did I handle this the right way? Proud father of 4 children, and recently my 7-year-old at the time, she came to me and she said, Dad, I want to watch Star Wars. And I was like, all right. And, I assuming on some YouTube video she saw a reference to Star Wars and heard about it that way, because that's how kids learn about everything, I think, these days. And so I was faced with a moment of decision, a moment I thought I was prepared for, and that is, your child comes to you and wants to watch Star Wars. Where do you start?
Yeah.
And
boy,
I panicked. We started watching The Phantom Menace.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I went in episodic order, in order of the saga, went to episode 1. about 20 minutes in, she certainly had lots of questions. Who's that guy? Who are these two disciples in the spaceship? Like, no, that's not James and Peter. That's Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Okay, she knew who Obi-Wan was, and we talked a little bit about what's in their hands. They're laser swords. Why are those robots trying to kill them? Well, it's complicated. I mean, there's trade routes and an embargo on a system. It's Naboo. We got deep into Nabooian. It's Nubian, excuse me, politics. She did have a lot of questions, like what's going on? Who is that creature, Jar Jar? What's up with the Queen's makeup? What's up with the Queen's voice? I mean, all really actually pretty good questions.
Yeah.
But about 45 minutes in, as we're talking, I look over and she's just fast asleep. And I realized, I thought, wow, I thought I was prepared for this moment. I thought I was a pretty good dad. I've always taken care of my children, never neglected them. I think I panicked, and instead of doing what I always thought I would do, which is, you bet, let's, go hook up the VCR, a wire, a pile of cables I'm trying to detangle, and hooking up an old VCR and finding my VHS copy of Star Wars. I instead went to the prequels, which was I don't know. What do you think, man? Have you been faced with this dilemma in the age of the prequels, and how did you deal with it?
No, I preempted the dilemma because I was like, you're going to sit down and you're going to watch A New Hope as God intended. So no, I did not wait for my children to be like, I want to watch Star Wars. It was just something that kind of was always around them. Now, I have contemplated the dilemma. And I was afraid when you started the story that you were going to say you started with Phantom Menace, because I do not think that's a good place to start. And I'm not. No, and I'm not going to disparage the prequels, and we're not going to go into all that. But I will say that it expects a lot of you to have background information going in, whereas A New Hope, just because it was the first Star Wars movie made, it does a lot of that setting up for you. And so narratively, it's a much easier entry point. And I do think that regardless of numerical system, I think you do 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. Like I don't think the series makes as much sense if you go 1 through 9 at all. So I'm not surprised that Phantom Menace that she kind of bounced off Phantom Menace. And I will say that my kids, even knowing 4, 5, and 6, when we got to Phantom Menace, it bored them all completely out of their mind. And I think that before the pod race sequence, all of them had kind of scattered back to their bedrooms because they were not having it. They were not interested at all in Phantom Menace. And to this day, I don't think my kids have seen Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith because they just don't care. Which is its own kind of sadness and its own kind of failure on me as a parent. But Phantom Menace, that's a tough starting point.
Yeah, it was a mistake. Like I said, I froze up. And, there's also, and thinking about it narratively, I mean, it takes all the tension out of the story. Right? I mean, it makes no sense at all. Other than the fact that I thought she might think, forgive me, Chris, forgive me, listener. I thought my daughter might think that Jar Jar and some of the other aliens in it were cuter than some of the aliens in A New Hope, which are kind of, some of them are a little scary and mean, right? But that totally takes the fun out of it. I really, really messed up. I have mentioned it a few times, like, hey, you want to watch Star Wars? There's really no interest to revisit it. I think she, we did get to have a discussion about, which was fun, which was about, like, I really like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon's my favorite. Why is he your favorite, Dad? Well, because he's wise and he's a little different than the rest of them, and you'll see that if you stay conscious, you'll see that. And and I said, don't. And I did say, don't they? When you're in Sunday school and you're hearing about the Bible times, don't these guys kind of look like what you would? Yes, they do, Dad. They do look like what you you see in the coloring pages, and and maybe when Ava's doing coloring pages in the future, she'll draw a little lightsaber hanging off of the robe of King David or whatever, just to show that there's. No, I don't say that. I'm not trying to be sacrilegious. I'm just pointing out the costuming similarities. Lots of robes and sandals, I guess, in the future, sorry, in the distant past. Now it all makes sense.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
George Lucas has created the apocryphal books of the Bible. With his Star Wars creation. So, no, I did thought that kind of tied into parenting and media, although in a very different way, right? That's just idiocy on the part of the parent, which is me, and potentially, ruining my daughter's interest in Star Wars. Like I said, she brought it to me.
Right.
I remember my wife wasn't home. She had ran to take care of something with her mother, and so her older sister was asleep. So just Dave and I watching stuff. She said, "Can we watch Star Wars?" I was like, "Wow, what a moment! What a I whizzed that moment right down my leg is a way to say it. So anyway, so reflect on that. Learn from me. If you learn nothing else today, listener, learn from me.
Start with episode 4.
Don't start with the sequels.
No.
In fact,
can't imagine.
If you're even considering that, just don't start. Just no. Go narratively. It makes the most sense to go with the originals and then work your way through it. Or not. Just stop.
I agree.
Here's
that's
Rogue
a
One.
different podcast.
Yeah. But what we're going to talk about today maybe is a little bit more serious than that, and that is, how do you do it now with all of the stuff, both good and bad, that's out there? How do you manage this and, manage the content that comes into your home that's put in front of your children's faces? How did our parents do that? And listener, how did your parents do that? And so that's the question we're asking today is, how do you parent in this age of media?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. And I will start by saying kind of how I grew up and how my parents did it, because I think that influenced the way that I parented and the way that I approached media with my children. But the way that my parents approached it was with a very laissez-faire attitude. And I don't say that disparagingly. Like, I cherish the way I grew up, and I am grateful for all of the things I was exposed to and all the opportunities I had. But for the vast majority of things, my parents didn't care what I watched. And they really left it up to me to be able to determine, is this something that is quality? Is this worthwhile? Is this something that he should be watching or shouldn't be watching? And they kind of went with that idea of, you teach correct principles and then you let that kind of work out. Now, I will say, and I'm sure we'll get into this part of the conversation, I did not always make the best choices, but I had the opportunity that when we were at a video rental store, I had my pick of the lot. Like, I could get anything I wanted to get. And because of that, I really look back on that and think about kind of the way it made me mature in media selection at a very early age, right? Like, I never had the thought of, this is inappropriate material, or this is banned from the house, and therefore I'm going to rebel and get my hands on this sort of thing. That did not exist with me growing up. And I think that really had a massive impact on me being a responsible adult when it comes to the fact that now we just have a fire hose that comes into our house and could be turned on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you could easily get lost in that torrent of media.
Wait, so I may have I may have lost your analogy there. Do you have a literal fire hose coming into your house, blasting your kids with water? Is this like the jail scene in Rambo?
You don't. You don't have
First
that.
Blood?
I mean, part of this episode is figuring out how we're the same and we're
Okay.
different
All
in the
right.
way we parent. But
No, I do
you did not
regularly
go.
delouse my children and blast them with a fire hose. So yeah, no, I'm kidding. I remember you and I going to the video store, which is I think it's the analog of the streaming service, right? Just
Sure.
unfettered access to as much as you can possibly. As much media as you could possibly want, and it's certainly, and we've talked about this in the past, certainly different, certainly more fun back in the old days. But yeah, you walked through the aisles and you looked, and our video store of choice, which was Ted's TV. A couple miles up the road from us, we did have access to lots of stuff. And we made some good choices, and we made some not so good choices. And I definitely want to dive in a little bit more to your take on that style and the permissiveness of it, and how that's informed you. And from my point of view, my parents were, and I will say this as you said, to your parents' credit. To my parents' credit, they were more strict about what we watched, and it was a little bit more like if my mom caught it, right, then there'd be a problem, but she didn't always necessarily know, just by seeing it whether or not it was good or bad. But if she heard something that she didn't like, she would know it. I have two perfect examples of this. One is, and I was 17 at the time, but I was watching Out for Justice with Steven Seagal, which is a terrible movie. I don't know if Chris, if you remember Out for Justice.
Oh, I remember.
It's the Steven Seagal movie where he has he's going after Richie. The word Richie is used a lot in that movie. The only other word that's used more is the F word, and it's where he beats a guy with a pool cue. And I also think like a cue ball in a knapsack or something. I think he was carrying a knapsack with him. I don't know. But I was watching this. I was 17 at the time, and the F word was used so much. My mom said, "If that thing says the F word again, I'm going to turn that off," and it did. I think it probably said the F word 4 times during that sentence, and it got turned off. Yeah, that was one, and then another one. This was even like as an adult. We were over at her house. I was married at the time, and I had rented Dark City, and she said, "That's demonic. Turn that off." And I will admit I had set up like a circle of candles around the TV and was, I was doing some questionable things.
Sure.
While she may have actually been talking about what
she was fine with the
demonic
movie.
dance I was doing, and not the movie. She's like, "This movie's great. I don't know what kind of spell you're doing over there, Anton LaVey Jr." No, she did have us turn that one off as well. And like I said, I was in my 20s, so this is so much more strict. My parents were about what came in.
So let me back up a little bit and give my parents the proper credit that they deserve. There were instances where I would come home with a movie or something like that, and they would object to it. And it would be like, let's shut this off for much the same reason that you just described with your parents. And I remember the one that really sticks in my mind was Goodfellas. The first time I'd ever tried to watch Goodfellas, my parents, we got maybe 20 minutes into the movie. I don't know if it was even that long. And my parents were like, "No, we're not."
I'm surprised
you
got through the FBI warning at the beginning of the VHS tape. I mean, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, it is. So we did not make it.
I thought this was
through.
about a group of friends Goodfellas, what?
Yeah, no, they were very disappointed. So there. I mean, we did like when I say unfettered access, I don't mean that they weren't paying attention, and I don't mean that there was no oversight. Like if something came into the house, but the cool thing about the way my parents handled it was there was conversation, right? Like, hey, this is why we're not going to finish Goodfellas, and this is why we're not going to let you watch it. Or if something came in that was a topic that maybe I didn't realize. Like I remember another one they had a big problem with, oddly, it was Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, because of the way it handled like the afterlife and that kind of thing. They objected to that one, but it was not a shut this off and get this out of our house. You know, it was a, hey, let's talk about why maybe this isn't something you should be spending your time on. So it was like that kind of coaching and teaching.
Teachable moments.
Yeah, exactly. And so that happened, you know, just a few times that I can think of. And then they really let those experiences just let me run with what I'd been taught and go from there. And sometimes, you know, I would get a movie that I wanted to see and I'd be watching it. And if you had said, hey, would your parents approve of this movie? I'd be like, well, no, they wouldn't, but I'm still going to finish it, you know, kind of a teenager-y kind of attitude thing. But we had similar experiences to your Out for Justice story. Now, if I had been your parents, I would have objected to Out for Justice, not for content, but just for, like, it's a terrible movie. Yeah, I mean, but that's a different category.
That was, you know, I will say, that was the turning point where Steven Seagal started making bad films. I mean, they were very good before that. I'm joking.
Were they very good?
They were watchable before that. Out for Justice was, oh boy, but March for Death and Hard to Kill were pretty darn good movies. So to my teenage brain, they certainly were.
Sure.
But Out for Justice was certainly a drop in quality. It's funny that you mentioned Bill and Ted. I thought they might have objected to it just because it was unfunny, but I do not possess any nostalgia for those films at all, which is, you know, weird because, you know, I mean about 80% of this podcast is just pure nostalgia, and I cannot get into those movies. You know, maybe it's because I just took the theology too seriously and then stepped away from the Church of Bill and Ted. I just can't, I can't touch
the time
anymore.
Travel mechanics. You're like, these are completely against the laws of physics.
Completely. This is not Back to the Future mechanics, and therefore I cannot accept it. It's funny that you would mention that you know, that one would be brought up and used as a teachable moment, because that's actually a film that, from a content perspective, right, is pretty wholesome, but there's something about it that presents, you know, an element of a worldview that they wanted to make sure that you knew didn't line up with your values, right? Like hey, this, I'm envisioning this, right? And tell me if I'm on the right track here. Hey, this isn't like a bad movie. Like, this isn't, you know, this isn't dirty or pornographic or whatever, right? But this is telling you something about the world that is counter to the way our beliefs you know, want you to understand our existence. And let's just talk about it for a moment. And I think that's a really great way to, you know, frame up works of fiction. Now, did you guys stop watching it, or was it like a pause? Let's talk about this and then finish.
If I remember right, it was a pause and then finish. And I think it was more of a pause, talk about it, and now we're going to leave the room while you finish it because we're not interested in this movie at all. kind of a thing.
Wait, they shunned you? Do they turn to their back on you?
Yeah. Now, they're like, we will not have a child who watches Bill and Ted's.
You are no longer our son.
So
this Keanu Reeves. that seems like I actually kind of like that, right? Like, hey, there's some things here that are kind of questionable, but it's all right if you finish it. I just want you to know this is not how you look at the world, right?
Yeah. And that's the way my
cool.
parents handled things, and another really prime example for the kind of the vein that you're talking about now is Beetlejuice, which was another movie that as a kid, I dearly loved. And they, there's some things in Beetlejuice. It's like, you're kind of going up against a line there, but
sure.
But it was the same thing. It was like, hey, we get that you love this movie. We get that you watch it on repeat, and it's not a movie for us. And just as long as you understand that this is fiction and this is not how things are really presented, then go for it. Have a good time. And that was my parents' attitude with a lot of things. And I am grateful for that. I think it really benefited me.
I can see Beetlejuice being at the time, an example of something that, again, as a work of fiction, right? It's not going to, lead you to heck, but you do want to clarify that this isn't, reflective of any sort of actual beliefs that we hold. So, in fact, Tim Burton stuff in general is kind of like that. It's kind of weird and creepy, but it's not bad. It's not, I'm not a big fan at all of Nightmare Before Christmas. Not because it's, not because I object to the content, just because for whatever reason I just don't care much for the movie. And my wife absolutely loves The Nightmare Before Christmas. I just bought a Halloween decoration that is a Nightmare Before Christmas themed thing for her, and she loves it so much. And I'll watch it with her. We'll go to the movies sometimes when they have the showings. We'll go see it at the theaters. But it is, I think his stuff. Burton's stuff is an example where you can just kind of point it out and say, hey, this is fine, but
And we're kind of dancing around this idea here of, fictional films and stories are good to a point, right? And we all have those examples that we've seen throughout media where people take it too far. And I think 99% of all media out there is fine if you don't take it too far. And I think that you can see people really becoming obsessed with things to the point where it is unhealthy and it does affect them. And that was always kind of shifting the conversation into how I parented. That was always my bigger concern, was like, oh, I don't want anyone to get to the point where they are fanatical about something. And that's, when we say we're a fan of something, that's the shortened version of the word fanatic.
Fanatical.
And that's always right. And that's always bothered me because it's like, ooh, I say I'm a fan because that's the colloquial thing. And it is a shortened way to describe how you feel about something. But it always bothered me that that's where it came from fanatic. Because it's like, ooh, I don't want to be that. I just want to enjoy something and profess my enjoyment for it and participate in that culture. But fanatical, that sounds bad to me.
No, totally. And we started out this discussion with Star Wars, right? Like, Star Wars presents what effectively is a space religion that is not compatible with Christianity, our religion, or really any of the Abramatic isn't from J.J. Abrams.
The J.J. Abrams.
It's Abrahamic, right?
Abrahamic. Yeah,
Abrahamic. I don't know why I was struggling with it. Anyways, from Old Testament Abraham, not J.J. Abrams. Yes. But no, I mean it does sort of almost Eastern philosophy type stuff that isn't really it doesn't really gel with those beliefs that you and I hold. But I don't believe in the Force. I'm not, trying to flip the light switch. I swear I'm not trying to flip the light switch on and off with the Force or any of those sorts of things. So, I don't take it too seriously. But I do see your point, right? You could go so far as to register your official religion as Jedi, and I think people do that. I think that mostly they do it as a lark. Sure. I hope. But yeah, I could, I can see that there are most media at most. I think you said 99%. I might go with 90% is just fine, and it's how you deal with it that could become the problem. And for us, though, I mean, the gatekeeper was at the video store for the most part, right? And there was that opportunity for your parents to look at. Most of the time they're not going to rent anything to you if it's not appropriate for your age. Now, that was not true of our video store. Our video store, Ted's TV, Curtis Mathis, on Division in Division Street in Springfield, Missouri, would, I think, have rented us anything. I mean, I'm not sure there would have.
I think they took pleasure in trying to out weird the last thing they rented us. I mean, I remember some.
You guys big William S. Burroughs fans? You want to watch Naked Lunch? I like Lunch. I was hoping to start with Naked Breakfast so I would know what was going on in Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
But no, they did. They would rent us anything. And that was kind of a problem. They could have been more responsible there. But there was some gatekeeping going on, at least an opportunity for the parents to see what you were bringing home. When we would go, when your grandma would take us, she wasn't paying any attention to what we rented.
So I want to talk about that a minute, because there was another level of gatekeeping that our parents benefited from with us that we did not have with our children. And that is, I think there was really societal gatekeeping. Like Hollywood studios and television channels that were producing content in the 80s, the level of content and how far they could push that envelope was so much less than it is today. And then today we also have the issue of social media content, which basically has no gatekeeping to it, right? Like anyone can produce anything and throw it up on YouTube. So there was even an expectation that I think my parents had, which is it's the local video store in Springfield, Missouri. What kind of trouble can he get into, right?
Yep.
And we don't have that fence around our children the way they did.
Right. Now, I think the posture has completely inverted, right? It is a posture of distrust. If it's in the local video store, from that point of view, it's okay. Now has gone to, if it's on YouTube, it's not okay, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost become that. That's a really interesting point that you brought up, right? That the society, where things were in general, right? You just kind of sort of the benefit of the doubt was given to everyone in the process, from the movie studio to the video store to, the cable company that was, sending stuff over the wire in an analog form, that it was probably going to be okay. Because who would make anything that's really too bad? And those things that were really too bad, right, that had risen to a level of, do not watch this, they became infamous, right? And I'll throw one out that I guarantee you'll remember is the movie Angel Heart. Right, like everybody knew in the late 80s, early 90s that that is not a movie you should watch. It's a bad movie, and it's a bad movie. It's sacrilegious. It's dirty, and that is one that like everybody knew of. And so if it was bad, it was it was off limits. That was a really small list, and that blacklist was short, and everybody knew what was on it. That's an example. Right. There's probably a few others.
Sure.
But by the way, I say that you remember Angel Heart, right? You know what I'm talking about. Okay. Right.
Robert De Niro, right?
Robert De Niro is the clever. Good Lord. Help me out here, man. How do you say it? Cleverly, I could type that. I can't say it. Named Louis Zephyr. Kids? Louis Zephyr? You're Lucifer? You see?
So clever.
Oh,
Didn't see that
man.
coming.
Woo. But yeah, right. So I mean, if it did truly cross the line, folks generally did know about it. I'm going to tell one quick story that I have told on the podcast before, but it is was apropos at the time, and it is just as apropos now, and that is that I borrowed movies regularly from my aunt and uncle, who had a incredible collection of VHS films. 20% of those were store-bought films, and I do remember quite funny in their library. They had a library in their home, and it was filled with books, right? I mean, legitimately books, but it also had a section of VHS films, but they had a copy of Crocodile Dundee on the shelf that never came out of the shrink wrap. I mean, until the day they moved after my uncle had passed and they moved out of the home. I believe that film stayed in the shrink wrap, which is just hilarious. But they had a huge selection of movies that and many of them were recorded off of HBO and Cinemax on their VCR at the time, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. They had a book where you could look it up and find out which video was where. It was they sort of had a system to track it, but on the tapes themselves, it would just be like, Terms of Endearment would be film 1, and then The Empire Strikes Back would be film 2. But anyways, I had borrowed many times the film RoboCop, and it was right in the middle. It was the second film on there. And the third film on there, my brother had pointed out to me, and I did not know this because I would just watch RoboCop, rewind it, and go back to watching RoboCop, was Lady Chatterley's Lover, which was an X-rated film, and I had no idea what that was. I did see that on the label, right? It was the third one on the label. What was it? Was it EP or S? I can't remember the speed.
EP,
right?
extended play.
EP was
EP.
you got 6 hours, right? So you could get 3 sub 2 hour movies on a tape. But what was funny is that I never dared watch once that happened. I never dared watch past RoboCop as my older brother, and that was my oldest brother who's since passed. But he didn't tell on me because he said, "Have you watched this?" I said, "No, Bob, I just want to watch RoboCop." He said, "Okay, just don't go beyond that," right? And I never did because I didn't want to lose my RoboCop privileges. Yeah. That was far more important than watching Adam West in an adult film. I'm not joking; he was in it. I did look it up. But there was like sort of a sense of trust like all around, right? That no one's going to put that on there. Now, in fairness, my aunt and uncle, I think they had HBO and Cinemax and Showtime back then, and I think they just recorded everything that was on, right?
Well, you had to get your money's worth.
Yes, I think they were recording every major film that was on, right? And that was just the way that it worked. And they had they had a 4-head VCR back in the day. They had the bigger tube TV that had the stereo speakers in the side. So they were they were pretty fancy in 1987. So it was. I think it's a funny story. But yeah, the societal gatekeeping that is. It's not a component of this I really thought of, but it is true, right? That you just assumed that nothing too bad was going to sneak its way in because, for the most part, nothing too bad really existed.
Right. And as you pointed out, if it did exist, it was labeled. I mean, like everybody knew you're not going to be watching Cinemax if you got kids in the room. I mean, that's just not what you do. Or even more drastic, it was separated by a curtain that was drawn in the video rental store, room. And you didn't go beyond that curtain unless you were just willing to give up everything that you'd fought for in life and just succumb to the horrors. So that existed.
Can I mention? I want to just say one more thing because I never get to say this. But in the UK, they had a concept of like those things that are that go above the line, right? Like, do not watch. It was called. I'm sure you're familiar with this term, video nasty. Have you ever heard of this term?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't.
Actually.
Okay, so that there are things that like Angel Heart or whatever, and I'm struggling to come up with. I know a lot of horror films did fall into this category, right? Like maybe some like trauma films, if you know trauma and.
Yep.
But yeah, there was a category that that they would call, it would be labeled video nasty. Faces of Death is an example of one that was, right? If you guys know, I never watched the Faces of Death movie, never would. I know most of that stuff is fake, but still it's just not something. But yeah, they had this thing that they would put the stamp on it, and they put the stamp on, and everybody in Britain then knew, oh, hey, that's a video nasty, and it meant to a subset of the population, hey, let's go find that so we can watch it because the government labeled it video nasty, and then to everybody else and the parents, it was like that's the thing we should avoid, right? So we didn't have something quite like that in the States, right? We had the MPAA, and then you had the X rating. But I think that the term video nasty, I don't even know if they still do that. I bet they probably don't, but it was a thing. Google it, and you can read a little bit about it. I think it's interesting, right, that they actually sort of like. We talk about that sort of understood line culturally. They just went ahead and drew the line, and then they gave it a hilarious name and called it video nasty. I kind of like that. Maybe that. You know what? I bet they consulted. They consulted Prince. He's like, if you're nasty, or wait, no, that would be Janet Jackson. What is it? Sorry, not Prince. I mean, what is it? Janet Jackson, Nasty Boy, only.
I have no knowledge of Janet Jackson material. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did. Listen, I've forgotten more about Janet Jackson than most people ever knew. Not really. Anyway, so now you learned something. Yeah,
there you go. So I'm very curious now to kind of turn the conversation and say that's our childhood. That's what we grew up with. And now, what did we do with our children when they started to take an interest in media?
Before we leave that, let's just really quick, though, we'll talk about the video store. Let's talk just real quick about cable. Because
cable TV.
Yeah, cable TV, right? Came into the house, analog cable for most of the time. I remember, boy, when digital cable came in, oh my goodness. Do you remember us calling the cable company like every couple weeks? Like,
do we have digital cable come to our house yet?
Yeah. And I don't think we even knew what it was, right? Like, really, truly, we just knew we wanted it because it was the next step, and we, and also I like there might have been a relationship between that and being able to get the Sega channel, which neither of us, had.
Yeah, we never got that anyway.
The cartridge for it, yeah. But at the time. Right, there were a handful of there was obviously Antenna, right, broadcast television, under the guidance of whatever that body is, what FTC, right, that manages that the airwaves, and then you had basic cable, which are your things like USA Network and the Comedy Channel during our days before it was Comedy Central, MTV, and then you had pay cable, although all cable is pay cable, but the premium channels, your HBOs, your Showtimes, your Cinemax. Which was but I do think that that Cinemax got that label of you could turn on HBO at 11 o'clock at night, and there's a pretty good chance that you were just going to watch, I don't know, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, right, or whatever. It was fine, right? But if you did happen to get Cinemax free for a month, which is how the only time we ever had it was when they had a free month or whatever. You knew not to turn that on after 11 or whatever the time was, because that's when Cinemax became Skinemax, right? That's that nickname, was very much applicable, and they showed a lot of like really dirty stuff. And that was kind of like that was the one channel that you should not watch, right? And I remember being, whenever we would have free that premium cable channels, like you can watch whatever. There were MTV. There were some issues with, we weren't always allowed to watch that, but Cinemax was like, sure, you want to turn it on at noon, Return of the Jedi's on, that's fine, right? But about 10 hours later, the schedule changed and other stuff was on, and probably a movie about like a ski school where the mountain is at risk from being bought by a rich guy, and there's a lot of nudity in it or something, and you shouldn't watch it. So we did have, cable was also a way that came into the home. In all your years with cable, did you ever get the unscrambled channel? Like,
no,
you could turn on HBO and it was...
No, I never did. And to that point, I never tried, and I think as we're talking to a broad audience that we don't know about these topics, something that bears mentioning is you and I were pretty trustworthy people, and I think our parents would agree with that statement. Like, we were not the kind of kids who was like, oh, I'm going to sneak the Playboy in the back, garage or whatever. That was not the world we grew up in. And so like things like that. And I think that kind of contributed to the attitude that my parents had as well, because, oh, hey, if the weather's just right, the Playboy channel unscrambles. I mean, that was not on my radar at all. And then in Cinemax, after that magic hour, it's not even like, oh, I'm going to try to sneak it. I just didn't do those things. Like, that wasn't it. And so I realized that there were probably people listening to this podcast that did not have that level of trust, or does not have that level of trust with their children. And that drastically affects this topic, right? But
it does. Yeah.
We just weren't those kinds of individuals. So I maybe say that we had all this freedom and all of this ability to make our own choices, but maybe that's purely because they knew our choices were going to be pretty okay.
Well, yeah, maybe so. And they weren't always okay, right? The reason why I mentioned the unscrambled cable is for several years, my older sister got HBO for free. She didn't know why. She never reported it, but she also didn't ask for it. But it was unscrambled, and apparently something was just the way that those filters worked back then. They put these filters on the cable, like a physical filter, and that would help control pre-digital cable days what you were able to get, and it just had gotten loose, and it's Channel 7 HBO, she was able to watch. It was slightly fuzzy, but hey, we didn't care. We were going to watch Monster Squad for free. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we were given a high degree of trust, and I think for the most part we did fine with it. I mean, I think, listen, there were some David Lynch movies we probably should not have watched, right?
Sure,
and I think we can just say that and leave it at that. And that they didn't damage me or anything, and I don't regret having seen them, but they probably were inappropriate. I will say this: my mom let me rent and this is just funny. She let me rent The Doors.
Oh yeah,
and obviously, that was fine because The Doors were a band from the 60s, and everything was wholesome in the 60s, therefore you can watch The Doors. And the reason why I got to watch The Doors was I had a test, a medical test, and I had to stay up all night, and for some reason, it was a sleep test, and I'd stay up all night so that I'd be able to sleep at the next day in the doctor's office, so I had to keep myself awake, and I got to watch The Doors. Not appropriate for a 12-year-old, but there was that whole, hey, it's this is like a movie about La Bamba, or whatever. Was La Bamba the name of a guy or the name of the song? No, it was the name of the song.
La Bamba was the song.
Yeah, there wasn't a guy named La Bamba. But anyway, so sorry, I kept dragging us back into the past, but Now we're a totally different point in the digital age, and I'm not just talking about digital cable, as cool as it was, it has opened up all kinds of all kinds of new avenues for access to media that is great and beneficial, and awful and mind and life destroying. And now that's what our kids have to contend with, and we as parents have to contend with. Much more challenging than previous generations, I think. You and I both have kids of different ages, right? So my oldest daughter and your oldest daughter are very close in age.
Yes.
Paige is 25, if I'm doing my math right. And your oldest daughter is how old?
21.
21, okay. So very, very similar, right, in terms of generation. And I think my oldest daughter's 26. So sorry about that. I did not do my math right. By the way, there's a certain point where you can kind of stop worrying about how old you are, right? Yeah, it's like over 20. It's like at 25, your car insurance goes down. That's a big deal. But for some folks, and for others who are not great drivers, it doesn't really matter.
It never does.
With that generation, they came of age at the dawn of social media, the dawn of streaming, the dawn of justice. No, wait, sorry. I did. That's a silly joke. But no, they came of age during a very early version of this new world of digital media. So let's talk a little bit about how you dealt with your daughter, and then we both have sons who are actually, I think our sons are the exact same age. So so they're both right in there. We how did you manage through that time period?
It was tricky. For the first little bit of my oldest daughter's life, it wasn't that different from how I grew up, because Netflix streaming was not yet a thing. We had basic cable, we had a TiVo, and so we were able to just kind of load up, in any kind of her favorite cartoons or kid shows or Sesame Street, whatever, and have that available at a moment's notice. And a lot of times she'd have constant access to the television, be able to turn it on, be able to call up her show, and everything was fine. There was no concern. What really changed for us was the advent of the iPad, because when the iPad hit, the grandparents had the great idea for one Christmas, every grandkid's going to get an iPad. And so very early on, all of my children had iPads, which meant...
by the way, that is a great idea, right? That's not like... You're not being...
No, that wasn't sarcasm.
That's awesome.
No, yeah. No, that absolutely, that they did that they were... And so my kids had an iPad before I did because of that. And I was very jealous at the time. I've gotten over it, though, so it's fine. But anyway, so very quickly, they essentially had a television that they could carry anywhere with them, and be that in the house or in the car or whatever. And for, long car trips, that was great. For being able to monitor what they watched, it wasn't that great. And we kind of came to understand this as parents as it was happening. And I still remember one day when my daughter was watching YouTube and was flipping through kid shows, and then suddenly I'm hearing words coming out of Cookie Monster's mouth that I guarantee you the Children's Television Workshop is not going to approve of that message, right?
Oh my, yes.
So so it was like, whoa, wait, time out, and grabbing the iPad and stopping and seeing what and there was nothing malicious about it. She was just flipping through, hey, here's the recommended video, here's the next thing that queued up, whatever. And this was before Google made any kind of attempt at safeguards, or there was no YouTube Kids or anything of that sort. It was just the Wild West for media. So that's when we really had to start paying attention. And we were like, hey, not everything that you can access on YouTube is going to be good for you. And it was really difficult for my daughter to kind of parse that, right? Like she didn't understand. She didn't think that there was anything that this magic square could ever bring into her life that wasn't amazing and wonderful. We started being a lot more conscious of it. And I never did the thing as a father where, I put like the firewall on and locked down websites or anything like that. Like I never did those types of things, but we would just try to do kind of the same thing that my parents did, which is like, hey, this is the way we believe. These are the kind of lifestyles that we cherish and value. And we want you to do the same. So from probably, toddler age when they were old enough to start watching television until 11, 12, 13, like that's the way we handled it. And then when we started getting teenagers, it had to evolve again because then there was sometimes malicious intent to try to get access to content.
Sure.
But that's how we started. And during that transition, that's how we attempted to kind of develop with the times, I guess.
So, and we spent a lot of time talking about like, Hollywood. I'm doing scare quotes, right? But, there's more to media than just, content produced by filmmakers, right? There's the YouTube content, and then there's like private stuff that people send or social media, like, what now is basically TikTok posts. But, did you find that things like, I don't know, like Snapchat or videos and text messages with inappropriate comment, was that something that you had to actively watch for, or was that even on your radar at all?
Yeah, it was something we had to actively watch for. And our solution was for a very long amount of time just not allowing our children to participate in social media. And that was mostly successful. Like our kids did not have a strong pushback to that. Our oldest daughter really wanted Facebook, and this would have been, the 2015s, like in that kind of area where Facebook really was very relevant to the world, especially to a teenager's world. So I think we finally relented and let our oldest have a Facebook account maybe like when they were 16, I think maybe was when we finally said, okay, you can do this, but your mom's got to be your friend on Facebook, and we're going to do regular phone checks and that kind of thing. Where we were kind of caught off guard a little bit more was actually with our youngest child, because they slid into it. Into social media in ways that we did not anticipate and that we did not have to deal with our older two children. And what happened was our youngest child had a YouTube channel and was posting content before we even realized it. And it was one day where we were like, hey, we don't do the social media thing. You're too young. When you're older, you can do it. And your brother and sister can't do it. And then they were like, I have a YouTube channel. And we were like, you do what? Yeah. And so then we had to look at it and lock it down and say, this is not okay. We're not okay that as an 11-year-old you're posting let's play videos, and I think to this day they resent us because that was going to be their career, and they probably would be like Mr. Beast numbers right now if we hadn't shut down that YouTube channel. But so the creativity and the tenacity of children kind of took us by surprise a little bit.
It's so funny that you have that story, because our oldest daughter, many years before your youngest would have experienced that, she had a YouTube channel that we didn't know about, and looking back on it, first of all, it's still out there, and I'm not going to say what it is, but it was the most innocent, sweet, harmless content, right? It was, she did a couple of rap songs. One of them was about bullying, an anti-bullying rap song. Another one was about eating popcorn. So it was so harmless and hilarious. And she gets very embarrassed because she doesn't know how to, she doesn't remember her login or anything, so she can't take it down. So occasionally we'll just, hey, remember that time you rapped about no more bullies? And I think that was actually the name of the rap was No More. I'm maybe giving too much information, but go look it up. It's hilarious. She'll get upset about it. But yeah, no, I think we did deal with that too. And thankfully, absolutely nothing like bad about it, but it was like, do you really want them, doing that, sharing anything with the world like that, even something innocent, right? It's questionable just because it's participation in something that you're just not sure where it leads to, what doors it opens, slippery slope type thinking.
Yeah, but two thoughts about that, which is one, I mean, when we discovered this about our child, there was no, like, they weren't in trouble, right? Like we weren't mad or anything like that. And part of the thought process that I had there, speaking purely for myself, is that I know if I had grown up in the era of YouTube and if I'd had an iPad with a built-in camera or if I'd had a cell phone, I would have had a YouTube channel as well.
We would have been writing scripts and putting on productions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get it, and like I have no problem with people having YouTube channels and creating content and putting it out there. It was just, as a parent, during the time, it was very new, very uncharted territory, and we were just trying to figure that out. But the other thing I'll say is it is fascinating to me how this conversation is not only divided into two generationally, but it's also divided into two in the fact that when I had kids, my thought was, I have to protect them from the bad media. My thought was not, I have to protect them from participating in media, and how much of a shift that was and how different that was from anything I expected to face as a parent, just because we had this shift in technology and availability to technology.
Yeah. You're no longer just a consumer, right? They can actually be producing media. It's a weird way of thinking that, to us that would be like the equivalent of us going out with a camcorder, recording some stuff in the backyard, and then it going on the shelf at the movie rental place, right? That's the video store, which was just unthinkable. But that's the reality that the kids of adults, everybody, right, has to deal with in today's world. Also, it never goes away, right? Once it's out there, it's always out there. And even, even the harmless, innocent stuff can still just, be embarrassing, and you'll be teased about it forever. And then, on the other side of that, if you do something that maybe crosses a line somewhere, right? It could affect your ability to, get a job. There's media that it follows you, right? It sticks with you. I'm going to give an example, right? I'm in the process right now. I'm looking at career options, and I was chatting with someone that I did not know, and they referenced in our discussion is something I posted about on Facebook. And now it's the most harmless thing in the world. It was about, big surprise, alien Earth. But I was like, well, you obviously, looked me up and you read about it, and you were probably thought, what a dork this fella is. But it is, it's out there. It's with you. And, had it been something controversial, had it been something awful or something that, maybe innocent but easily misunderstood, that could become a real problem. Now, for me, I just look like a nerd, which is fine, and I don't mind that at all. And I'm also extremely careful about what I put on social media. It's pretty much 100% about Alien at this point. if listeners to the show should not be surprised, or about the show, right? But those things follow you, right? And it's a whole new twist on this, being able to be part of the media ecosystem and contribute to it, and then have that follow you around for the rest of your life, kids.
Yeah. So be warned. Be aware of that. Strange that you share that story, because I recently made a career decision and was able to find a new job to start. And during the interview process, one of the things that they said to me was, "You don't have a social media presence." like that worried them, like that they didn't know who I was outside of my resume. And so
did you say, well, not on the regular web?
Yeah, I was like, let me show you, like, 2middleagedguys.com, the numeral 2 middleagedguys.com.
Or let's fire up the Tor browser and go check out the dark web. And then you're gonna learn all about me, buddy. You opened this can of worms, sir.
Yes.
I'm joking.
So, it is such a weird time in the history of the world right now, because your story is 100% correct. And as parents, we're trying to guard our kids and make sure that there's nothing super embarrassing out there. But at the same time, you kind of have to participate, right? Like, I mean, the world is going in such a way where if you don't have I think on my personal Facebook post, the last thing I posted was like 12 years ago or something like that. So basically I look like, one of those crazy, like, live in the woods people, because I've completely abandoned my Facebook page.
Right.
So
you're out chopping wood in front of the cabin, and the government comes up. Chris, we need you to post on Facebook just one more time.
Yeah.
I gave that up.
Don't ask me to come back.
We need you to post about Twin Peaks just one more time. Fine.
I'll do it for my country.
Yeah, for my country. For David Lynch.
But yeah, it is such a weird time. And I'm sure that people out there listening are screaming at their phones right now because of their own opinions about this and stories that they have. But I thought that as a parent, I would be like, don't watch that David Lynch movie. And that would be the end all be all of media discussion I'd ever have to have.
Right.
And it's so much more complicated than that.
And then your kids would be like, which one? You'd be like, wow, all of them but the straight story and Dune. Yes. But otherwise, don't watch that David Lynch movie.
They'd be like, but Blue Velvet is the seminal film of his catalog. I'd be like, no, don't.
Oh, no, Lord, no. What? Wait, are you hiding a nitrous oxide canister in your bedroom? What is going on here?
You watched Blue Velvet, didn't you? Don't lie to me. But,
are you singing into a flashlight?
But I will give my kids complete credit in that, they didn't seek out bad media. That they were very responsible in what they watched. If we told them not to watch something, they didn't watch it. They never tried to go behind our backs. And the challenge really has been, how do you navigate the fact that now everyone can create media? Sure. And that is a shift in the world that I'm still trying to parse. I still don't have all the answers to that. Even as somebody that has a podcast, is it within my rights to have a podcast? Do people want to hear what I'm saying? I'm not sure about that. So it's completely up in the air.
Let us know. No.
Yeah. They're like, no, you should not have a podcast.
Kick Chris out of the podcast. Wasn't kind of a weird turn, but let's go with it. Let me share a real quick story, because there's a responsibility element here that's on the kids too, right? And this is a story. A few years back, it was, I believe, my son's 16th birthday. And he had a birthday party and a sleepover where a bunch of his buddies got to come over. Great kids all. I came home, and they're all hanging out, and on the big TV they're watching a scary movie, and I'm not sure which one it was. It was like one of those like one word, scary movies, Insidious, or I don't know. It wasn't Insidious, but it probably starred Ethan Hawke, right? I mean, it was one of those, and I looked, and then I looked in the other room, and in my son's bedroom, one of his friends was in there by himself. He was looking at his phone. And I asked the young man, hey man, why aren't you out here with them watching this? And he said, I'm not allowed to watch movies like this. It was an R-rated movie, and it had content in it he wasn't allowed to watch. And so he was accountable to the rules and standards of his family. This kid was also he was a missionary's kid, and he had spent most of his life in the field in Africa, and wonderful kid. All of my son's friends were great, but this kid was a wonderful kid, and this really impressed upon me. Wow, how great it was. For him to be, accountable. So I just walked away and let him hang out in the bedroom. No, I'm just kidding. No, I went and I talked to the boys and said, "Hey, listen, guys, you're watching something here that that this young man can't watch, and that's actually should be an example for you all. That doesn't mean you have to apply the same standards to you, but it does mean that you should have enough respect for him that you choose to watch something that's good for everybody." They all agreed, and we brought everyone back together, and he really wanted to watch Angel Heart. It turns out I was like, okay, well, I guess if that's no, I don't know what they watched after that, but there is an element of that responsibility with the kid that goes to how they're raised, and what drives them and shapes their values, and I just thought that was a neat story of good decisions being made despite the fact that as you put it, media is being blasted at them like as if it's coming out of a fire hose, and also the element of peer pressure in the room, literal peers pressuring them in the room.
I really appreciate that story. I'm glad that you shared it. And I think as parents that's what most of us want our kids to do, right? If they're in any kind of a situation. But it calls to mind something that I have been bouncing around in my head when we started talking about doing this episode and this topic. And I think this is going to be where I land on this topic. And then I'll give you a chance to give your kind of closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap up here. But there is a tenet of our church that is maybe unique in the way that we phrase it, but I think that everybody can kind of understand the spirit of it, where it's coming from. But that idea is that the world is so complicated now that if you don't have the assistance of the Holy Spirit, then there's just no possible way you can navigate it. And I experienced that in my life as an adult even. Like, there is so much that's constantly coming at me, whether it's movies, TVs, streaming, the news. It's a never-ending onslaught. And to have that guidance from a power that is higher than me, that I believe in, to me, that is the crux of this question, which is, how do I choose what media is appropriate for me to watch? How do I try to guide my children to navigate this sea of just incredible amounts of information? How do you parse that without help? That's kind of where this discussion has led me to think, and to be grateful for that teaching that we have, and then maybe that's beneficial for somebody out there who's struggling with the same thing, either with navigating media themselves or with their children, and trying to figure out how to help them navigate it, because it is tricky, and I'm pretty sure it's only going to get trickier because everybody's just making stuff now and throwing it out there, and it is just an endless ocean of content.
No, absolutely, and I think that we've been pretty clear, right? This is not a religious podcast, but this is a podcast from people who are religious, right? So
Right.
this kind of gets woven into it, right? And yeah, absolutely, that informs the standards set by my faith do inform the choices that I make about the media that I consume, and as well as you mentioned the Holy Spirit, absolutely, right? There's an element of that. And that doesn't mean emotion, right? Like, because I think you could, emotionally trick yourself into thinking anything's okay. Oh, this made me happy. So, therefore I'm going to do it, right? I mean, pretty sure heroin would make you pretty happy too, right? So, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you, but absolutely. And I think that what that is for us, is, and I guess this could also exist in a secular sense too, but it's an objective set of standards that are immovable and immutable, right? And that we can easily tell for most things what is right and what is wrong, and then for the trickier stuff, it gives us a framework with which to contemplate it and make a decision on where it lands if it's not just obviously clear. And most things are pretty darn clear. But yeah, no, I think that it's good that you bring up the religious aspect, because it does give us a yardstick that we can measure the content and see where it fits for us, or if it fits at all.
Wow, that got deep.
It did. Wow, I know, right? So I'd like to spend the next 5 minutes speaking in tongues. So for the audience, please, and then Chris, I'm going to need you to translate. I hope you're prepared.
I'll do my best.
I have a couple kids that are younger than your youngest, and my youngest is now 8, and she's watching a lot of stuff that's on YouTube Kids, and then a little bit that's on YouTube. We've tried to keep it to YouTube Kids with parental controls, and then we tried to, if there's some things that are just on YouTube proper, we'll with supervision allow that. But even the stuff that's on YouTube Kids, I got questions about it, and it's questions like, and some of it's just like, I don't even know what the heck I am watching. Now, there's a lot of it that's just like crafty videos. A lot of it is. And it's like, okay, that's fine. How do you make a plush? How do you make a, whatever, right? But when the plush is like these weird creature things, I don't know. It's like, they're very scary. And then she'll draw a picture of these scary things. And I'm like, if a psychologist was to see this, I'm afraid that, they would take you away from us. And so I'll mention, and so broadly, think YouTube Kids, and all the stuff that's on there. But I'm going to mention something in particular that I am very confused by, and maybe you've heard of them and you have an opinion, or if not, maybe our listeners will. But that is Poppy Playtime, which I think is kind of like the spiritual successor to like Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever, that survival horror thing with the evil Chuck E. Cheese type thing, but it's called Poppy Playtime, about these toys that are bad, and some are good and some are bad, and Catnap and Dog Day, and there are these weird looking cats and dogs and birds and other creatures that have and they come to life in this toy factory, and I believe it's based on a video game, but my daughter really likes this stuff, and she doesn't play the game, and mostly she likes to watch the videos that really get into like the crafting around creating these really bizarre looking, evil Muppet looking creatures. But a lot of this stuff's on YouTube Kids, and I can't figure out if it's really kid appropriate or not. I don't know. Have you ever heard of this Poppy Playtime thing, and any experience at all with YouTube Kids?
I'm not familiar with Poppy Playtime. We did go through a Five Nights at Freddy's phase with our youngest one, and that was a big deal, and that was their most favorite thing for a very long time. And I will say they came out of that I think unscarred. So maybe that's encouraging for you and your daughter, but I am not familiar with Poppy's Playtime. It sounds terrifying. I'm not going to go check it out. That's for sure.
Let's go do this. Hey, let's do this in real time. Google Poppy Playtime catnap. Just type that into your search bar. Do it in real time, folks. This is Kristen. This is not a bit.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You see it, right? Listener, do the same. As you're driving down the highway, probably doing like 85, just, type that up.
Wow. That is.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So, and this is stuff that's on YouTube, and I can't figure out, exactly, it's based on a game, I think. Which is like a survival horror for kids type thing that does none of those words should fit together. The broader point that I'm making is even the YouTube that's for kids, for crying out loud, I'm not so sure about.
There is something to that age in horror. Like I remember when you and I went through a Friday the 13th phase and a Child's Play phase, so I don't know what that is. Like, I'd love for a psychologist to chime in and be like, oh, here, this is what's happening. And this is why in that kind of 8 to 13 phase, horror becomes like really interesting to people. Like, I wonder if there's something going on there. Because like I said, we went through a very, very deep Five Nights at Freddy's phase. And, I'm watching it and Chuck E. Cheese has always terrified me. So I see Five Nights at Freddy's and I'm like, I don't want any part of this. And my kid was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I love it. And getting into the lore of it and watching like these theory videos where it's like, and this connects to this. And I'm just like, wow, I have no idea. So maybe Poppy's Playtime is like a safe way to exercise whatever it is about our brains developing at that time that says we want to be scared by something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah. No, I do think human beings do have a tendency to want to be scared of things. And I do remember the phases. The Friday the 13th phase in particular is particularly memorable because those always scared me, and I got just brave enough for a while to watch some of them, and then they went back to scaring me. And I don't like them. I incidentally own all of those films on my Voodoo Fandango account because I bought them. There was I found a deal where it was like, not joking, $10 for all of them in HD. And I was trying to build my library, and every time I'm scrolling through and see those, like, ooh, I'm not gonna watch that. That's scary. They still kind of scare me to this day, but we are kind of hardwired to like that for some reason, or maybe maybe in our new modern different lifestyle where we're not being chased down by predators. Maybe there's something like, I don't know, where we think maybe we should be. I don't know. But
maybe in their animatronic.
In their animatronic, and they serve pizza at their restaurant, and they sing terrible songs, and you play skee ball while they're trying to attack you.
Maybe it's just us trying to cope with our fears of high cholesterol, and like that's how it's coming out.
That's what it is. But and I listen. I don't have a problem with kids watching stuff that spooks them a little bit, because maybe that's just part of life, right? It's fun and it's fine. I just don't want them getting so into it, right, that all of a sudden they're praying to Poppy and catnap and doing stuffed animal sacrifices, and not that any of that has happened in our home. It hasn't, but I just worry where does it go from there? But
I'll take the stuffed animal sacrifices over the actual animal sacrifices.
Sure.
Just to have that out there. But, I follow what you're saying.
Yeah, the cleanup is, I got a little shop vac set aside specifically for the stuffed animal sacrificing. And, it's a whole lot easier to deal with in general.
This may be the only episode where we're like, we don't know, we don't have a clue what we're doing.
That's yes. So yeah, so audience, listener, help us out, or maybe just empathize with us. Toss in and say, hey guys, we're in the same boat as you. We're a mom, we're a dad. We're fighting the same fight with you all, and that doesn't mean like when I say fighting the fight, I don't mean like we're actively like protesting Google or Amazon, right? But it's a fight of personal accountability and choices, and what are the right choices to make. And we'd love to hear from you if you are struggling with this as we have and as we are. Love to hear what you have to say. Chris, tell them how they can reach out to us and give us guidance, and maybe we'll just let them take over the show if they've got a good enough idea.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. To do that, to submit your application, go to 2middleagedguys.com. That is 2 middleagedguys.com. And from there, you can email us. You can find us on our socials. You can get all the back episodes that we've done, which is quite a lot at this point. Our output's pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. But go to that website, check us out. Reach out to us because we love to have user interaction. And again, this episode was completely inspired by user interaction. So listeners, give us ideas. What do you want to hear us blather on about? Because we are good at blathering.
Absolutely. I have a master's in blathering from University of Phoenix. It's the one thing they're accredited in. So I feel pretty good about that.
I'm a Juilliard trained blatherer. So.
Oh, yes. Yes, you were originally on the medical track. You were going to be a physician, a Juilliard trained physician, then decided I'm going to focus on the blathering, and good call. Not the same earning potential, but I think it really fit in better with your personality.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, folks, thank you for joining us. I hope maybe we made you think a little bit about the same things that we're thinking on, and reflect on your parents and how they handled it, and you and how you're handling it, and maybe we gave you a few ideas. Maybe we just scared you, and you're at this moment lifting your television above your head to toss it out the window. Like Tommy Wiseau in The Room, just an incredible show of strength. Hey, if you want to destroy your TV, that's fine. Just don't destroy, whatever device you listen to podcasts on, because, then that would affect our listenership, and that's extremely important, far more important than, whatever else you have going on in your life.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.